So, welcome, Barbara. And today's topic in Paro Wednesday webinars is writing winning proposals. So, this is recorded. If you missed this live presentation, you can always email info@paro.ca or Barbara's email when she provides them during the presentation. So, welcome, Barbara, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Really excited about this because I have quite a bit of experience writing proposals. It's not my chosen career necessarily. However, I have just ended up writing a lot of proposals. So I'm going to share with you today my knowledge built up over about 25 years and several $1 million in grants and requests for proposals. So it's a pretty small group. So if anyone has questions, I mean, I've got a lot of information to cover, but if you have a question during, just put your hand up or put it in the chat. So this is just an overview. I'm going to, I've given my introduction. I'm going to talk about writing grants and proposals, the project or business case, and then we can have some discussion and questions. So the grant and proposal writing process, I see it in basically 4 phases. And sorry, I just want to plug this in so I can follow my clock to make sure I don't go over. So step 1 is finding grants or proposals. And step 2, which is what I'm going to talk about today, is writing those grants and proposals. So that's what I'm really focusing on. And I'm focusing on it at a really high level to give some tips. We're not going to get into the details. Step 3, undertaking the work. And step 4, stewardship. So that's really where you're managing a client. You have continued collaborations with them, and certainly keeping them informed of the work that you're doing. So 2 types, for the purposes of this presentation, 2 types of grants and proposals. One is grants for funding. So that's specific issue funding. So it could be for a women's business, women-led business. It could be for COVID. It could be youth funding, all these examples from a university, from a foundation. It could be from a sector. So for instance, if you have a project that relates to agriculture, you could be looking in that sector for funding. And the other is requests for proposals. So this is what I do a lot of. So my business, which I should have said at the introduction, is writing and strategic communications. I do a lot of work with government, non-government organizations, private sector. So I'm always looking for work. And the way I look for work is somebody will put out a request for proposal saying they're looking for this service, usually, although it can be for products too, and I respond to that. So federal government, and we often don't think of this, but it's an excellent, there's a website called mercs.com. It's a really good place to look to see what's happening in the business world, really, even though it's government. They spend about $23 billion annually on goods and services, and you'd be surprised what some of the things they're looking for. Potato chips, counseling for diversity, equity, and inclusion, like so many different services. So it's just good to get to have a look at it sometimes just to see it. It's pretty cool. So getting into the nitty gritty here, when I get one of these requests for a proposal or there's a grant opportunity, the first step, to me, the most important step, because you've got to see, is it worth my time? And I call this the quick assessment. So I'm looking at things like the deadline. Is there still time for me to do this? This is really, really key, because most of these RFPs, requests for proposals or grants, they're not going to change the deadline for you, right? They've got lots of people interested. Do I qualify? Do I meet all of the criteria? And that really means all of the criteria. And you have to be hard on yourself when it comes to this, because these are usually really competitive, and there's not a lot of flexibility on whether or not you qualify. You either do or you don't. Is it a good fit? Does it make sense? Is it a grant that's put out by, I don't know, a youth group and you don't have anything to do with youth, right? Is it, so you really need to see that the values are the same, there's synergy, and that it just, you know, makes sense. The value, how much funding is available? Is it $50,000? Is it $50,000 divided up between, you know, 100,000 people, right? So really looking at the investment that you're putting into it versus what's going to come out of it. So that's the quick assessment, and you'll get to know, you should be able to look at something and know within 5 minutes if what the deadline is, if you qualify, if it's a good fit, and how much is it. Those are like the 4 things I look for. And the other thing is actually reading the request for proposal or the grant. Like actually, once you've gone through that quick assessment, reading it. And I know that sounds so obvious, but how many times have you, and I think, not to stereotype, but I think we're worse as women, or not worse, but we're less, I don't know, I always give my partner the manual to read and then tell me what I need to know. So it's like, read the manual, understand what they're looking for. As you get to know these requests for proposals and grants, you can sort of see, okay, that's the jargon that's going to be in every one, that they're not liable and all this kind of stuff. But it is, as you're getting to know it, really important to read it. And a lot of times key information is buried. For example, I put in an application, well, I started a request for proposal a couple of months ago, and I had met all the criteria. I did the quick assessment, looked like a really good fit. And then as I was looking through, because I wanted to see if they had a security clearance, there was a note that said this bid is open to Indigenous suppliers only. Now, why that wasn't in the mandatory criteria, it wasn't. So the things can be buried, and security clearance is another one. Maybe they want you to have a certain security clearance, or, you know, a certain amount of assets, whatever it is. Everybody doing okay with the pace? Any questions so far? Okay. So a sample grant or RFP would be, they want to see what's your corporate profile about your business. They want to see some samples of your work. They might want to know who else has funded you, where your money comes from. They might want to see a bank statement. They might want to know how you're going to do the work. Your response. Now, here's the thing. Some of these grants and applications, they're online. So you're going to be following a computer or like a data, what do you even call it? Well, it's online, right? So, and they're going to say you have 400 word limit for this section, 200 words for this section. So they've kind of set it up for you for what you want. In those cases, what I would do is copy that and work in a word processing format. I work in Word, and get everything down and really, really final. And then you're going to plop it in at the very end after it's been reviewed, after you make sure you've got everything. So your working copy comes offline and then you put it online. Others that aren't like that, it's really, really key that you mimic what they ask for. Okay. So if they say, we want to know about your business, you're going to say, this is about our business. And you're going to just mimic what they've asked for in that order. So it's really easy for them to follow. One of the key pieces of information that I can share, and that it's taken me a while to learn, is you really need to think like a reviewer or a client. So your job is to make their life easy. You want to get their attention. You want to present your information in a way that follows their format, because believe me, they have a checklist and they're going through when they're evaluating these. You throw them off course even a little bit, it does this, and then they lose interest. So for example, the Royal Bank has a lot of grants available, and they get about 20,000 applications a year. So I did the math on that, and that would be 2 people working full-time, 40 hours a week, reviewing these grants. So, you know, and that's, I don't know what I figured, I can't remember what I figured it out to, but like 25 grants a day each. So think about it, right? You've really got to get their attention. You've got to make it easy. You've got to solve their problem. And it's the same if it's a service type bid. So if they're looking for someone like me, who's a writer, or maybe a, you know, website designer, you need to solve the problem for them. So you need to like almost step out of your role, which is providing the service, and think about what they need and what they want to see. So the other thing is, and I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned this later, but you also want to make sure you give them the critical information only. Don't start throwing in things that don't matter and that they didn't ask for. With the exception, and this is sometimes what I do in my proposals, is testimonials at the end, or if you have an environmental policy, social policy, diversity, equity, inclusion policy, those are real bonuses. And a lot of the funding, the foundations or the business organizations or the request for proposal ask for that now. So that's something to keep in mind. Then I create a checklist, right? It sounds really obvious, but I really want to see it visually. That's what works for me. So these are the things they want. They want the profile, the project, the approach, impact evaluation, budget. And again, as I said, this is the same list that your same order that the request is being made. Advanced preparation, really, really key to do this and not think, oh yeah, I've got that, and do it 3 days before, like, or start it 3 days before, like I do sometimes. And then you realize, oh, I need a letter of reference, or, oh, I need a bank statement, right? And then you're kind of panicking because those things take time. So by creating a checklist, something like this, where you say, okay, I've got the company profile, I don't need to go anywhere for that. Proposed project, I've got that, but I need to get something from the bank or something from one of my partners. So you start working on that stuff early, and you're building, you know, your checklist. You're preparing your submission like this, and then notes. You know, if you have any questions, maybe you want to ask them questions. Sometimes, especially for a request for proposal, they'll have a window where you can ask questions by a certain time. That's a really important, that's really important information to have. And that, again, is not necessarily the information that's going to be up front. It might be buried. And that's why reading these things is so important. And then the other thing that I do, and again, I'm talking really high level, and I know there's probably going to be, you know, specific, you know, more specific needs and questions, but it's high level here. So know your audience. This is the sort of discovery process. So you're looking at your funder or your potential client, okay? And you're saying, who have they hired in the past? Who have they funded in the past? What are some examples of projects that they've funded? What are their values? What direction are they going? Look at what they're doing on social media, right? Because that's going to give you some clues too. And what are the synergies with my project? How will my project advance their goals? Do they have overarching programs? And I'm just gonna, oh shoot, now I don't know if I can go back. Yeah, I can. I've got my camera at the side is hiding part of this. There we go. Just going to move it over there. What's their funding history, their priorities and interests? And really key in the writing is looking at the words and themes that they use. You want to be careful here because you don't want to seem like you're just, you know, copying them. But if they're using collaboration a lot, or if they're using innovation, or if they're using, you know, social values and priorities, this type of wording, then you really want to pick up on that and make sure that when they're looking at your application or your whatever it is you're providing, that they see themselves without it being too obvious, if you know what I mean. It's a subtlety. You don't want to just repeat their wording, but you want them to see themselves in it. And I have a bit of a case study here with Up and Running Guelph, which is a great organization or NGO, I guess, that came out of the UK. And Guelph is the kind of pilot project for it outside of the UK. And it's a program to get women together to walk and run for mental and physical health and well-being. So they came to me and they were applying for a couple of grants, which they ended up getting both of them. But the city of Guelph had a grant and they wanted to apply for it. So we looked at the City of Guelph website. And the City of Guelph website, their big visions for the future: health, inclusivity, nurture. So we looked at, okay, what does Up and Running do? It's this group of women that help other women. So they're promoting mental and physical wellness. They're promoting belonging and taking care of each other. So this is kind of the idea of how you want to look at your funder and look at yourself and identify synergies or opportunities. So the project or a business case. So this is like your story, how you're promoting yourself. Sorry about that. So your company profile, what makes your business unique, the project, the approach, impact and evaluation is huge. What difference is this going to make? Budget, how much money do you need and how will you use it? And how can we trust you? It's about trust as well. So, excuse me. So the company profile, this is and again, these categories are very general, but typical at the same time. So not necessarily every grant application is going to have this. They are all unique. And I will say now that they are all so unique that sometimes I hear people say, oh, good, we've done one, so we're good for the next one. That's really, really rare. I know, because if you really want it to work, it's about customizing. And I spent about 10 years working with Indigenous and Northern Affairs Canada. And what I was doing with them as a communications expert was writing requests for proposal for communication services. So we were looking for graphic designers, we were looking for writers, we were looking for media monitoring, all these services. So I would write basically the job description, companies would apply, and then we would evaluate them. And so often I would see companies just kind of slapping it together and here's all the information. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, they've done this before, but they're not thinking about me and what my needs are. They've given me way too much information. I'm not going to read it all. It's disorganized. I got 5 pages of stuff that I haven't even asked for. So it's really important to customize in most, if not all, cases. So you can talk about what you do. Statistics are really important, like your achievements. So that could be sales, that could be that you've moved into a new retail store, and also who says your product or service is great. So that's again the testimonials and clients or perhaps other funders, and the project. So here's where you really need to capture the attention. This is the real core of it. What are you going to do that's going to make a difference, that's going to make me look good, or that's going to help me out as the client or funder? So what's the need you're solving? Why does it matter? Like, who cares, right? So you really want to, and this is where knowing what your funder or has funded in the past, or who's been hired in the past, is really, really key. And supporting evidence. So don't tell them, show them, right? Goals and timing. This is really important that you've created a schedule for your project. With a lot of foundations only fund projects. So sometimes you have to take your story and turn it into kind of a project. So over the next year, we want to achieve XX in sales and take this retail outlet or expand to have 2 retail outlets, that kind of idea. So they need to see the progress, and they need to see the goals and timing with that. Your approach, how are you going to make it happen? Sometimes you're limited by, as I said, by a word number here, but really cutting to the quick of how this is going to happen, the actions you're going to take, how you're going to adapt. I mean, who knew about COVID, right? And so what happens now if there's something else? Or what happens if, I don't know, your community floods, all of these disasters we're hearing around here. So not that you have to play out every scenario, but you do want to show that you have an adaptation plan or in your strategy. Again, going back to what are the milestones for completing your work. Impact and evaluation. who's going to benefit from this project? For example, Up and Running, they looked at the number of women. They did a study on Up and Running, which is that group that I told you about from the UK. And they found that women who took the program, they had improved confidence, they had improved physical health, they created this network, they continued walking. So this is a really big change. And these are changes that they anticipated. So they, measurable changes. How they measure it is ongoing surveys with the women who participate in the program, women who come back to the program. And then return on investment. Why is this a good investment for the funder or the person hiring you for services? Why should they, how are they going to see in financial terms or in, social terms, whatever it is, the difference? Quality control and insurance, just how you want to keep things flowing, how you're going to be on top of it. You're going to be the project manager. Maybe you have a co-partner. Budget, this one's fairly obvious. What's the budget for the project? Typical question. What you're going to do with the money. Identify cash and in-kind services. So in-kind, so maybe you have volunteers, or maybe there are resources coming from a financial model that's already set up. They'd like to see other funders and subcontractors and partners because then there's a sense of this is a sense of accountability, that it's in motion. The other thing is that typically funders, they're not taking you on for life. They are taking you on as part of your process. So they want to know that this process is solid, it's sound, and that maybe you've had funding before. And if you haven't, you're setting up so that you can get funding again or be self-sufficient. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about well, first I should say, does anybody have any questions? I know I'm really whipping through this. We do have a recording, which is good, and I think you're going to get a copy of the presentation if you want it, so you can keep some of these tips. But does anyone have any questions or concerns? Everything going okay on your side?
Barbara, I can ask them at the end, just to keep the flow going.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, okay, so writing tips and quality control. And this is, I know with writing, and I used to be like this, where I would just get so overwhelmed with having to write that I didn't write. And now I'm a writer. So it is possible to overcome this, with practice. But a few tips here. Plain language, okay? Clear, concise, compelling, no fancy fonts. Don't do all kinds of, just like simple, clear font, no technical jargon. If you do have to use technical jargon, make sure they know what it is, or you put in parenthesis what it is. These people who are reviewing your proposal are not necessarily, experts in your field. In fact, they're probably not. What they probably are is number crunchers, right? So anyway, I'll get to that, do the math, but so just keep the language really simple, grammatically correct. Make sure you have no spelling or punctuation mistakes. If you're looking at programs or referring to programs of theirs, make sure you have the exact name of the program, the exact name of the person. Don't shorten Barbara to Barb. Don't, assume it's a Mr. when it could be a Ms. Really this is the kind of thing that can throw somebody off and make them go, oh, well, you didn't even know that, or you didn't even check that. So really important. And no exclamation marks. Okay, this is like, when you get these proposals, they're like, we've got this great project, exclamation mark. It's going to change the world, exclamation mark. I mean, if maybe there might be a spot for one exclamation mark, but I'd probably be ready to debate that too. You're presenting information to them. You can show your enthusiasm in other ways. Style, you want to engage them. your proposal is new and fresh, but make sure they can relate well to it. Make sure it comes across as new and fresh to them, but also coming back to addressing their needs or your perception of their needs. Again, they need to connect. They need to see their priorities and values in your proposal. And as I said earlier, include words that they use a lot in their collateral, or at least words that refer to that. So if they're talking about, collaboration, you could say working together, or, something like that. Innovation, cutting edge. Do the math. And again, as I said, most grant reviewers are number crunchers. So make sure that all of your numbers total up in the budget, and that they make sense. If you have to provide a bank statement, this is really, really important, because they're giving you money. Money is math. Revisit the checklist. That checklist that I mentioned at the beginning, you want to be following that throughout. It's just going to make your life easy. Okay, got it, no, need it, got it. Just keep it at the side of your desk. Also, and I don't know if I mentioned it later, so I'm just going to mention it now, keep track of these grants and requests for proposal that you apply for. Have a spreadsheet. Keep track of ones that you filled out, what the response was. And because then, something might come up in a year and you might say, oh, did I ever apply for that? So really good record keeping is important. Contact names with these, just set up a database. And I know it's, just set up a database, but it's really important to keep track. And you never know, there might be another opportunity and somebody might remember you from this, depending how big the call was. So other things to keep in mind, extras, and I talked about this at the beginning. Should I include extra information, samples, etc.? My answer is no. If they ask for 3 samples, give them 3 samples. If they ask for 2 references, give them 2 references. And the reason why you think, oh, I'll give them 3, that'll be great. No, you need to make their life easy. If you give them 3, it confuses them. Well, which one do we call? Well, we don't have time to call 3, or, oh, they didn't read what we asked for. So really stick to what they asked for. Now, again, the exception is if you have some space at the end, especially if it's not one of these online proposal requests, you can include some testimonials. You can show that you have a social or environmental policy, or a diversity, equity, inclusion policy. So that's the kind of extras that I think are okay, in my opinion. Timeline, connect project and the work to the grant and the proposal time. Okay, so let's say the project, the deadline for the grant is April 1st. Give some time for your project or your work to start. Don't make it start April 10th or April 5th, because you're not even going to know yet, right? Make it start May 1st or May 15th even, right? So another thing that we don't always think about, but making sure that timeline is realistic to when they're going to announce the winner or the fundee, and when you're going to get the money. Contacting, should I reach out during the process? So, as I said, some applications will have will allow for an opportunity for questions to be asked, and they'll give a deadline. Yes, if you have questions, you can work within that deadline. Some of them don't. You can still try asking, but a lot of times they're not going to answer. They're just too busy, especially for some of these ones online that are just, there's massive interest in them. Once you submit your proposal or your project, your application, whatever it is, should you reach out? I typically say, no, just wait. They've got it. Just wait. Now, if it goes 3 months, I don't know. It's a tough one. You could, but they may not respond to you. A lot of times, and I learned this working in government, if you haven't heard anything, it's because they don't know. Okay, but at the same time, so I mean, but you still can. It's a fine. You don't want to draw too. It's like with Revenue Canada. You want to get your information, but you don't necessarily want to draw too much attention to yourself. right? Like you don't want to be perceived as a pain or something like that. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, so the next step, review. Have someone, you've got your proposal ready. It's in a Word document. You've got the word count. You're going to pop it into that online application. But you need to review it. Review, review, review. Have someone unfamiliar with your work review your proposal to see, because probably whoever is reviewing it is going to be unfamiliar. Does it make sense? Does it flow right? Are there acronyms in there that nobody's going to know what they are? Is it clear? And then have someone really familiar with your work review your proposal. And this is especially true. I mean, if you're talking about getting a $25,000 grant, that's huge, right? So it's really worth investing all of this energy in. Revise. So revisit, review, revise. Check your numbers. Really, it's rarely ever, well, it's never for me ever just okay, and I'm a writer, I've written it, I'm going to pop it in. It really is a matter of processing, and reviewing. And then submit it, hit send. Yeah, hit send and wait. So response, how do I proceed from here? I've sent it in. What if my project or proposal is not accepted? And what if my project or proposal is accepted? So if it's not accepted, so if they come back and they say, thank you very much, you didn't get it, you can ask, why didn't I get it? Is there an opportunity for a review? How could I have done better? Again, a lot of times with those big funding, those big grant opportunities, they're not going to have time. So you can ask and then just kind of let it go, because they're not going to have time to answer you, probably. Now, if they do, then that's great. You can look at what could you improve on next time, or maybe it's just they're just going to say there were just so many applications. With a request for proposal, so that's where you're going in with a service, and maybe there's not as many companies, maybe there's 10. Typically with government, they'll give you a sort of a review opportunity, and maybe it'll just be in writing. I know they used to have meetings for you, like you could spend 15 minutes talking about what you could have done better. So that's always good to do, because then you can see where you can improve. You have feedback on this application that you put in. If you reach out to them once and you don't hear back from them, let it go. Don't push it. With the exception, if let's say it's a client you've been working with, or a funder you've been working with for 10 years, and every year they fund you, and this year all of a sudden nothing, crickets. Well, and you write them and you say, oh, I just wondered why, something different. And if they don't answer, then I think you can push it a little bit, because you really, like, something really big has changed. Otherwise, just leave it. What if my project or proposal is accepted? Well, this is great news. And this takes you from step 2 in the proposal writing to step 3, which is actually doing the work. And, this is where you just really want to make a good impression. You're setting the stage. You've got this funding, or this work, and you're setting the stage for future funding or future work. So do what they asked. Thank them. Never miss an opportunity to say thank you. Whether that's on your invoice, or whether that's, each time you have a conversation with them, let them know you appreciate it. Find out what they need. I mean, they'll tell you, right? They'll say, we want our logo on your website now. We want this, or not, whatever they say, do it. And make sure you follow through with regular progress reports. You're setting the stage here to possibly get more funding from them, but also to get funding from others. Because once one good funding or job experience goes well, that's like gold, because they know funders will look and say, wow, this, we got a reference from this other funder, or that went really well, and that project, and that, that makes a good impression. So it's really important to do the work. And I mean, I think obviously you'll do the work, but create a strong relationship with the funder or the client. So top 10 takeaways. Again, step 2, you're going to do the quick assessment, see if it's worth your time. You're going to read it, especially with the first one. You're going to read it, right? Sometimes you'll see, okay, this is all jargon. This is like all about the, and you know that. But look at the headlines. Make sure you've read it. Create that checklist. Discovery, get to know your audience, your client, their business, your business. Find a project that makes sense, or it's not always a project. It could be they just want to know how your skills suit their needs. Submit samples that resonate if they ask for samples. Follow the writing tips. Review and revise. Make sure that, again, somebody who really knows your work reads it and likes it, and somebody who doesn't know your work, and not your family or someone like that. Not to judge your family, but if it's my family, it's going to say, oh, you're awesome, that's great. But they're not really going to give you an unbiased kind of review. So, you know, somebody who's, you know, intelligent at picking up the concepts and who's a bit removed so that they're not just, you know, flattering you. Think like a proposal reviewer. If there's one piece of information you take from this 35 minutes, think like a proposal reviewer. Why would I want you? What problems are you solving for me? How are you going to make me look? And think about them sitting at their desk, getting hundreds of proposals a week, okay? That's gonna really help you. Don't despair. You get better at this with practice. And I know you think, oh, proposal writing, it's so brutal. And it kind of is, but think about what you're creating here with every time you do one of these applications, you're kind of building your brand, you're refining your brand, you're really building a sales pitch here, right? And you learn from it. So it does get easier. And as I said, have fun with it. You're building your brand, and yeah, that's 40 minutes of what I've learned over 25 years at a really high level. And I hope you find it helpful. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara.
You're welcome.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute. All right, Andrea.
Yeah, I'll let Tracy go first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm quite interested in the proposal writing, but I'm wondering, you're focused on a lot of grants and that. Can you use a proposal in a cold call format? So, for instance, my company, I'm branching into horticultural therapy. So there's a number of mental health organizations and seniors organizations around the city that I can see a potential of partnering with. I have approached one, and that the first thing she said is put together a proposal for me. What you're talking about right now, can you apply all of that to kind of a cold call proposal, or is that a good way of approaching things?
That's a great question. And it's funny because I had to shorten the presentation for today because of time, but I do have in my other presentation proactive approach. What I talked about today is reactive. So somebody puts something out and you apply, you reach out, you think, yeah, I fit that. So the answer to your question is 100% absolutely. And there's two kind of ways, well, it's probably more than two, but two ways you can do that. One is if you're just reaching out to a company that you don't know, which is not your case here because the company's asked for a proposal, you can do what I call a letter, well, not what I call, it's called a letter of inquiry. So it's a one-page letter where you reach out and you say, you know, I'm interested in the work that you're doing, and there might be a fit here, and here's why. You're not asking for money, you're not even asking for work, you're just looking to make a connection. So that's the one way. And I get asked this all the time, prepare a proposal, right? So I think, yes, all of this can be used for that as well. From, you know, I mean, maybe not the quick assessment, although that's good information to have. By when do they want it? You know, that sort of thing. but also I think looking at what you offer as a service and who the company is that's asking for the proposal. So you're doing landscape therapy, correct? And the company that's looking for your work, let's say it's University of Waterloo, right? So you're going to do the same kind of thing. You're going to say to University of Waterloo, proposal for landscape therapy services. You're going to do a letter of introduction, okay, which I always do when it's a request for proposal, just a little bit about me and and then your experience, you know, what you can offer them. You don't even necessarily have to put money in. I mean, unless they ask for it, but you're showing why you would add value. So the answer to your question is yes. And if you want, Tracy, if you like, outside of this session, if you wanted to talk about that, or, you know, especially since we're doing very different work, I'd be even happy to show you some of the proposals that I've done. If you think it would be helpful, just reach out. Is that helpful?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone have any sort of like grants that they're applying for or that they want to ask about?
Not yet. How often do you monitor MERCs, Barbara, or do you get notifications?
I get notifications, but I like to go on too, because the notifications I've customized for my business. So they're going to send me stuff to do with, you know, writing, communications, environment, but I like to go on, and it's just mercs.com because it is really interesting and surprising, some of the services that they're, you know, looking for, and products too. Like, not kidding you, potato chips. They wanted bags, like 10,000 bags of potato chips. So you think, geez, I wish I could think of some other examples, but this is what the government of Canada is buying, and they need it, right? And they're putting it out, and it kind of gives an indication of the potential that's happening in the private sector to outside of the public sector. So it's, you know, it depends on everyone's business, right? Like if you're a chocolate retailer, it may not make sense, but government, I'm sure, buys chocolate too, which is kind of interesting. Something you might not think of.
Can I ask another question? It's getting more into your experiences. Do you think that there's a difference? Like, do you find the government looks for companies that are incorporated versus sole proprietor, or do you think there's not even it's not even a point like to even think about? It's not a problem.
Well, for me, I'm not incorporated. I'm a sole proprietorship, and I've never, you know, I've never seen it that I have to be incorporated. Sometimes they'll ask for, they want a liability insurance of like $2 million, which costs about, I think about $400 a year. I could be off on that. So sometimes they'll ask for things like that, but I don't think it matters if you're not, in my experience. I mean, there may be, excuse me, cases where that isn't true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't experienced it, but there's always, you know, that I get asked that a lot. And then, you know, you just think, well, maybe I should be more formal, but if it doesn't make sense for your business, it doesn't make sense, right? So.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you start seeing a pattern where now they're looking for more, you know, businesses that are incorporated, but I don't know what the difference would be for them. Mm-hmm. Incorporated versus sole. I mean, it makes a big difference for you as a business owner, but I don't know what it would be for them that they would distinguish, unless they're looking for some big team or something. And typically teams are with businesses that are incorporated. But
okay, I have one more question if no one else is going. No one's going to ask. Do you you mentioned like in kind, right? I've done some in kind in my proposal writing. Do you find it's always necessary? Like, do they ask for it or do you offer it?
It depends. What do you mean in this case by in kind?
Well, on one of your, Yeah, one of your last sheets, it said proposal writing, like costing, and then it said, you know, any sort of pricing and in kind. So for me, that means that, you know, sometimes the client will ask me, do you offer any in kind, I want to say discounts, so to speak, or any in kind offerings where the grant will actually match whatever in kind the vendors will offer? Do you, like, in your experience, what is in kind meant?
To me, yeah. And to me, in kind means something where there's not an exchange of money directly to them. So,
Yeah.
for example, if you have a volunteer, if you, let's say you're a gardening, or let's use Tracy's business, and I'm going to, that may not be the way, it probably isn't the way you operate, but let's say, you know, it's a landscape therapy. And let's say the University of Guelph, which has a great landscape architecture program, has said, you can use this space. Right, you can use this space if you're going to bring people in here. We've got this wonderful garden, and that would be an in-kind service, right? Another one would be like maybe a volunteer who helps you. And an in-kind service can also be someone who contributes to the project and may be paid by someone else, but the payment isn't reflected in this particular proposal, or it's not a cost to them. So that's the way I see in-kind. Is that the way you see it too, Andrea? Kind of? Yeah,
there's no actual money being flowed from one to the other or anything like that. It's more of just like a an intangible offering that adds value to that. But I didn't know if that is normally you see that being asked for, or if it's something that you offer. And I know you said, you know, don't offer extras, but I'm just wondering about the in-kind.
Yeah, and when I was saying don't offer extras, I was kind of meaning don't give them materials that they have to review that has nothing to do with what they asked for. I'm trying to think of an example of an in-kind that would work. I mean, here's an example maybe. So let's say you're looking for a grant and you're going to do this work. And let's say there's an office, let's say a government office, for example, that's going to give you office space. So that would be an in-kind. So you have your office space covered to do the project. Do I actually tell people that? Only really if it's budgetary, right? I don't say, oh, we've got this. In fact, I do the opposite. Well, not really the opposite, but I'll tell people that we work out of a small office, downtown Guelph, really small environmental footprint, remote work like everybody's doing. So, but that's not really in kind. That's more about the setup.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to. I don't want to confuse anybody. I just see that sometimes, and you know, wonder, because a lot of times we don't. It's not even an option, right? When you're looking at grants and proposals.
Yeah, yeah. I think in a budget, it's usually in a budget breakdown. Like this is in kind, so there's no cost, and the office space is here, or the yeah. Do you have a question, Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm a sole proprietor. I do business by myself, and I offer services, personal shopper delivery service. I also drive people for personal driver. Okay, but I find it very hard as a personal proprietor. Excuse my language. That it's hard getting a loan or a grant from anybody.
It is. I'm not going to argue with you there. Yeah, and I mean, it's like you have to build up your reputation, kind of earn your stripes, keep track of, you know, what you've invested, where you're going, the difference it's making.
I got a business coming in, but as the money comes in, the money goes out. So I find it hard to do certain things at a certain time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so your business is you're a personal
Shopper delivery service.
Okay. So, I mean, one thing that you might want to look at is, and where are you based, in Thunder Bay?
No, in Tillsonburg.
Oh, in Tillsonburg. Okay.
Yeah.
So you might want to look at what draw a connection with long-term care homes or senior, maybe not long-term care homes, but seniors groups to see how you can make a difference to keep. So you need to find an angle, right? And I know that sounds really sleazy,
I know.
but I don't mean it like that. I mean, you need to find an opportunity, right? So find out if seniors are staying in their home, for example, because they have a personal shopper, right? What's out there for facilitating this? So you kind of need to think outside the box a little bit, right? Like, what difference are you making in the community? You need to position a strong argument, but I mean, you need to have a strong business case too, right? Like it may be, and that's something you've got to be building, and you probably have to develop some equity to get that. It's really tough. Like I've never been able to get actually I haven't really tried that much, but a business loan, because my model is kind of like yours. It works, but it's kind of just going along as opposed to massive growth or.
Well, I'm doing it from home, right? And I find it very hard to do it from home.
Yeah.
So, and then I also drive people, and then sometimes when I'm doing a delivery, people call me and I can't afford to hire someone else. So,
are you doing any of the Paro, like the Biz Camp or anything like that? Like, do you know about some of these programs or that help take your business to the next level?
not really, no.
Yeah, it's something you might want to talk to this group about, because there are really good free programs and mentorships and stuff that can help. And I'll get Andrea to maybe speak about that, because Andrea's with Paro.
Yeah, I was just thinking, Jennifer, I don't know if you're working with the Paro counselor.
Yeah, I am working with Deborah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, she's wonderful. So talk to her about Jet Setters. It's a group where you have to have like kind of a certain funding, you have to have a certain number of sales, but to get you there, I'm thinking like, if you had some bigger contracts under your belt, and like Barbara mentioned, writing like a letter of inquiry or a letter of introduction to some of these.
I know, but the problem is with getting a bigger contract, and then the regular people that I drive and I go out to do something, they're calling me and I'm not there to help them.
So you might have to start looking at working, like hiring somebody on contract, right? So they don't become an employee, but they have their own set of liability insurance, and then you make money off of them, but you pay them accordingly, even though you still make money off of them, and figure out what that pricing structure looks like, because you might have to actually look at your pricing as well to make sure you're on point and you're not undercutting yourself.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Good. But because you either have to automate or you have to hire bodies to get to the next level if you have no more time, right? So you have to automate some processes for yourself. So maybe you get yourself like a virtual assistant that might help to take calls and filter or book appointments, or you go online with booking appointments. And I know people are older, so maybe they may not be able to handle the online stuff, but you're going to have to do a deep dive, with your counselor to see if you can break this up, right? Because you're at a breaking point now where you need to scale up, and you need to see, what you need. Like, you need more people. How are you going to make that happen?
Yeah, we spoke about that, but it's just, I just find it very hard sometimes. I enjoy what I do, and the customers that I have enjoy like my service and everything, but when I'm not there, I feel bad.
Yeah, and if they enjoy you that much, then maybe they'll pay more.
Oh yeah, some of them is like, so I've been told that maybe I'm undercharging for some things. But at the same time, I don't want to overcharge. Like, I don't charge much for a shopper, but some people say I'm charging too much, and it's like, that is not a lot.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's probably going to say you're charging too much. Like, and it's a tough economy too, right? But it has to, what you're charging, gas prices are going up, like all, food prices are going up. But also to say, Jennifer, you're not alone. Like this is one of the biggest challenges. I think Andrea would probably concur that we face as entrepreneurs as we're, starting a business and growing. And that's why any support services that you can get through Paro or, is really, really good to take advantage of. Yeah, but it's a tough spot to be in, but I think there are solutions. So keep the faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I just wanted, since Barbara's doing such a great job of plugging Paro for us, tomorrow evening is our monthly networking event where women come and talk about their business, try and collaborate with other women, and it's at 4:30 Eastern time. So if you're interested, if you want, I'll just put my email in the chat and you can email me and I will send you a link, and we can tell it. It's just networking, easy peasy, no obligations. We do, there are women in there looking at circles, Paro circles, and that just allows you to create your own peer mentoring network to have, women support you, and then also opens up doors for funding as well.
And I think, just one other thought, Jennifer, is looking to what other businesses are doing is like getting involved in this network is really, it's helped me so much, right? And if you can find someone with a similar situation and how they got through it, that's really good to look for ideas in that way, right? Especially if it's someone you're not competing with, so there's no threat or anything. It's just women supporting women, people supporting people.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Barbara. That was awesome.
You're welcome. And if anybody wants to contact me, like Tracy or Jennifer or anyone, please feel free to do so.
Do you want to pop your email in the chat?
Sure.
And just, that would help. Thanks, Nefri.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. The recording will stop. And if you missed any of the webinars or you want to